Happy Tuesday. While you are getting out your classwork notebook and have your iPad open, you can pause this video and then resume it when you're ready. You will need to take some notes in your classwork notebook or do all of the notes on these slides. It's up to you. I would recommend downloading the slides from Canvas first and then playing this in a side-by-side so that you can do the work and then check your work with what we've done. The goal for today's class is to be making sure that we understand the moves and the strategies that we need to use to simplify expressions. So we're going to make sure that we understand how to do that, and then we're going to move on eventually later in the week to some complex expressions and ideas. So in order to do this today, we're going to review the strategies for simplifying expression mats. We're going to compare the mats and decide which mat is greater. Our learning target for today is going to be, I can simplify expressions by using legal moves. Please pause this video and go to the Canvas homepage, go to Modules, select Tuesday. In there will be several things that you can download. Obviously, the weekly R&P. There will also be 2 resource pages. The 215 resource page, please download that into the additional file. And then the class problems, please put that in class slides. When you are ready, please come back to this video. We will start with the first of the 2 sheets I asked you to download, the resource page for legal moves. Last week, we talked about making 0 pairs. 0 pairs are when you have 2 tiles that have the opposite and exact value in the same region of your mat. You can see the information on the side clearly shows that there are 2 unit tiles. This is a +1 and this is a -1. Together, those 2 tiles equal the value of 0. What we talked about was circling them, putting a line through them, and showing them removing themselves from the actual mat. It does not matter if they are in the negative space or in the positive space. If together they add up as 0, you can go ahead and remove them. If you decide to make a key that says 0 pairs, you can do that. If you do not make a key, you must say over here 0 pairs. Many of you did not do this in your R&P, and you did not do this in your Friday formative. In the future, I will have to mark it wrong because I need to know what your justification is for removing them from the mat. Again, last week, we had the idea of taking objects, tiles, that were in the opposite region, this is the opposite region, and flipping them up to the positive region. Remember, our notes clearly stated that no tiles can live in the opposite region. When we flip them up to the actual region, we need to redraw them as the opposite value. As you can see here in the example, we had 2 +1 unit tiles. When we flipped them and moved them up into the actual region, they each became a -1 unit tile. Again, if you set yourself as a key and you say flip, that's all you need to do. Otherwise, you need to somehow indicate that you are flipping them. Otherwise, it'll have to be marked incorrect. The last piece that we did not talk about last week was the idea of removing balanced set. So what is a balanced set? A balanced set would exist when there are tiles like these 2, -1, -1, and -1, -1, that live in opposite regions of our mat. Or if this mat had a second side, if there was a second side to the mat, and there were tiles that were the same from here to here, you could also remove them. So what you need to understand is when you have tiles that are the same in each positive and negative region, you can circle them, you can remove them, and the reason, of course, would be a balanced set. Why can we do this? Well, I want you to think about something for a minute. If I took these 2, again, I'm with my green, which means to flip, and I brought them up and I redrew them as positive unit tiles, then I would end up having a zero pair that I could remove because the negative and the positive add together. So the idea of the balanced set saves you 2 additional steps. So obviously, this is the way that you want to do something like that. Okay, so now we're going to have a discussion about comparing mats, and we're going to draw our little pictures, and we're going to simplify the expressions that are on our mats. At this point, you should have a split screen with the classwork problems. The goal today is to determine which of our expressions is greater. So 2 expressions can be represented side by side on 2 different mats. That's what we're going to do today. You can simplify them and compare the simplified expression on each mat to determine which mat is greater. Again, please make sure at this point you have the classwork problems open as a side by side for each one of these problems coming up. Okay, so here we go. Here's our first problem. Let's work through it together. Again, you can pause this, try to do it yourself, and then come back to it, but I will go through each one of these together. So the first problem, we have our left, we have our right. The idea is which is greater. The first thing you need to do is to figure out what is the original expression on each of the mats, and then what is the simplified expression on each of the mats. So let's do that right now. If we look at each one of these mats and we try to figure out what is the original expression on the top, you can combine the positive tiles together, which would be 1, 2, 3, 4. So we have 4 minus, let's do it over here, 4 minus, and then what do we have? We have 3. And then on the right side, we end up with 1 minus 3. So what we want to do is we want to simplify our mats in order to determine which one is greater. You can see here, we have some 0 pairs. So those are going to be removed on each one of the mats individually. And I will make myself a key, which will say 0 pairs. Once I have completed that, I want to figure out what is left. What is left on the left-hand side is a +1 tile, and what is left on the right-hand side are 2 negative tiles. So what is greater, -1 or -2? Obviously, -1 would be greater. Okay, let's do it again. In this case, we actually have an original expression that has values that live in the negative, the opposite region for the left side. So what do we have? On the top, we have -1, and then in the bottom, negative in parentheses. That is what we use. This indicator right here is what we use to show that there's going to be values in the opposite region on the bottom. So we have a -2 value in the bottom. On the right-hand side, we have 1 minus 2. So what are we going to do? We are going to flip these up here. So again, we make ourselves a key. We're using different colors. You're using your iPad, so you are able to do all of those things. And then we would redraw. This is our redraw right here. And the first thing we obviously want to go and take care of is our 0 pairs. And we have another one right here. So we have our 0 pairs. And what do we have left? We end up on the left-hand side with a +1 and on the right-hand side with a -1. So what is greater? Again, the left-hand side is greater. All right, next example. So the first thing that we want to understand is what do we have alive on our mats? On the left-hand side, we have an x +1 minus 2. And on the right-hand side, we have an x +2 minus 2. So the first thing that you want to go ahead and do is to remove your 0 pairs. That is always the thing you want to do first. So we're going to remove those. And we are actually going to remove all of these. It's lovely when you can do that. Again, we have our key with our 0 pairs. Hopefully what you can see also on here is, I'm going to do it on here too because it looks like these are copied from the book, and so they do it step by step. What you can also see here is that we have balanced sets. So this is really highlighting the idea of the balanced sets. So you can remove those. So what do we end up having on our left mat? We have a -1. And on our right mat, we have 0. 0 is greater than -1, so the right mat this time is the greater mat. Okay, go ahead and pause this video and see if you can figure out how to get which side is greater, left or right, and then come back. So welcome back. The first thing we want to do is write down our two original expressions. On the left-hand mat, we have x plus 2 minus 2, and then in the negative region, we have 3. On our right-hand mat, we have x plus 2 minus 3, and then in our negative region, we have -2. So then we're going to make ourselves a key. That's the first thing I usually do, and I just write it all down. I have my balanced sets, B-A-L-A-N, balanced sets. Then I go ahead and I do my 0 pairs. And I know that I'm going to be flipping because I do have values in the bottom, so I'm going to flip. The first thing I want to do is get rid of my 0 pairs, which are all of those, so those are gone. And then a lot of these, so those are also gone. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of my balanced sets. So I'm going to take this x off as a balanced set, and I'm going to take that x off as a balanced set. I am also going after these two as a balanced set. All right, so it does get kind of messy. So now I'm going to take this, I'm going to flip it up. I'll go all the way up to here. I will redraw that as a positive tile. I'm going to take these three positive tiles, and I'm going to bring them all the way up here. I will redraw them as 3 negative tiles. So what do I have left? On my left tile, I have -3. And on my right, or left mat, excuse me, on my right mat, I have 1. Okay, so which one is greater? The 1. So the right mat is greater. How'd you do? Hopefully you did okay. Let's try it again. Okay, again, I would work on this yourself, and then I would come back after you've had an opportunity to process and see how yours works with mine. So again, the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to start off with my key. So I have my balanced sets. I have my 0 pairs. And I have my flipped. Now I'm going to write down my original expressions. On my left-hand side, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I have 5 minus 1, 2, 3. And then I do have things living in the negative region, so I have parentheses 1 minus 2. On my right-hand side, I have 2 minus 2. Hopefully you can see already that that is going to end up being a 0. And then I do have stuff living in my negative region, so I have minus parentheses 1 minus 3. All right, so in true 2 form, I'm going to go after my 0 pairs first. So I have several of them. I have these two, and those two. So I'm just going to circle all of them together, and those are going to leave the mat. I also have another 0 pair right there that will leave the mat. Next up, I know that these are going to go here because I kind of already processed that with you. And then I have another group right here. Okay, so I'm taking a look, and it doesn't look like I have any balanced sets. Ooh, I think I'm wrong about that, actually. I do have a balanced set right here and right here. Those can both leave the mat, making my life a lot easier before I end up flipping my mat. So what do I have to do? I have nothing left to flip on the left-hand side, but I do have one on the right-hand side, so that one's going to flip up. and that's going to become negative now. It will be a positive tile. So let's see what we have left. We have nothing left on the bottom. Good. I have 2 positive tiles left on the top. So I have 2. And then I have nothing left on the bottom, but I do have 1 positive tile left here. So if I have 2 and 1, what does that mean? Well, that actually means that I could have simplified a little bit further. So this is the add-on that I want you to think. Obviously, 2 is greater than 1. But wouldn't it be nice if we, one more time, did the idea of balanced sets? So I can take this unit tile and remove it, and I can take that unit tile and remove it. So truly simplified would be 1 and 0. So hopefully that made sense. Okay, last one more time. Go ahead and pause this video if you need to, or just follow along with me as I do it. We will start where we have before with making our key. The first thing we have are balanced sets. Next up is our 0 pairs. And lastly, we have our flipping. Let's write down what we have as our original expressions on each of our mats. So we have on the top for the left, we have x plus 1, 2, 3, 4, plus 4 minus 2, and then we do have in the negative region 2 minus 1. On the right-hand side, we have x plus 1 minus 2, and then in the negative region, we have negative 4. Just going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so that seems right. So, of course, I always go after my 0 pairs first. So I've got 1 right here, and then I've got another one right there, and 1 more. Lovely. Next up, I've got 1 here, so I'm just going to remove those. And that is all that I have there. The next thing I'm going to do is get rid of my balanced sets. So I can take that off. And I can also take that one off. And it looks like that's all I can do. Nope, I have 1 more here. I can take that one off, and I can take that one off. Okay, so when you get messy like this, sometimes I will go ahead and I will like highlight all that I have left so that I don't lose track of it. And I can see by doing that, I have now made myself a little bit of a mistake because that would be a balanced set. So I could take that off and I could take that off. So going ahead and highlighting that information really is helpful because it will show you what you have left and it'll kind of make sure that you don't make a mistake. All right, next up is flipping. So I'm going to take all 3 of these and I'm going to bring them up here and I'm going to draw 3 positive tiles. 1, 2, and 3. I'm going to pause and I'm going to look because now I know that I have 1 more balanced set. I can take that one out and I can take any one of those 3 left out. So what do I have left on the left-hand side? I have 0. And on the right-hand side, I have 2. So my right-hand mat would be greater. Hopefully that made sense. If it didn't, we will obviously work on it tomorrow. At this point, you are to go back to Canvas, and if you haven't already done so, download the weekly R&P and get started. I have for you today problems 51 and 53. You are always welcome to move on and work on extras if you would like. When you finish, you can quietly work at your table.